Should the Detroit Lions move on from defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn? That is the question we have been asking ourselves year after year, and now in the third year. And the question will continue to be asked. Should Dan Campbell fire defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn? Now, there was a offensive coordinator that was fired last week. Matt Canada was fired by Mike Tomlin, and Mike Tomlin didn't even confer with the general manager. He just said, I'll do it myself. Decided to fire the offensive coordinator, Matt Canada. The question is, can Dan Campbell do the same? Now, Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn have quite the history together. They spent time in New Orleans, and they got quite a thing going on between the two of them. And we've seen this movie before. Dan Campbell does not want to fire Aaron Glenn. Let me take you back to last year. The Detroit Lions are 1-6. They just lose to the Miami Dolphins. And Dan Campbell decides to fire the defensive back coordinator, Arby Pleasant. Why would he do that? Why would he do that when our defensive backfield was the secondary was Mike Hughes, Amani Oruwariye, Jeff Okudah, and others up against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, a combination that very few teams can stop. As a matter of fact, they can't even stop them this year. Tyreek Hill leads the NFL in receiving yards, but we decide to fire the defensive back coach when our defense was ranked 32 and was trending historically bad. We take it out on the defensive back coach. And when asked why that happened, Dan Campbell said something had to change. In other words, I can't fire my friend Aaron Glenn. I just realized that rhymed. But is it time for the Detroit Lions to move on from Aaron Glenn? We might have to say yes. We might have to say yes. I'm not one to give up on something so quick, but this is a history. We have a history here with Aaron Glenn. Let me show you something. Where the Detroit Lions currently rank when it comes to points per game. You can allow all the yards that you want to. You have to keep the defense or the offense out of the end zone. So I'm not looking at yards. I'm looking at points. Okay, coming from ESPN, I think this is going to blow your mind. And I want you to pay attention and tell me what you see. This is the defensive ranking by points per game. The Washington Commanders are the worst. I think this includes today's game. They got mollywopped by the Dallas Cowboys. The Carolina Panthers, 27.5. The Denver Broncos, 26.8. The Chicago Bears, 26. New York Giants, 25.9. The Arizona Cardinals, 25.8. The Indianapolis Colts, 24.8. The Miami Dolphins, 23.8. The New England Patriots, 23.8. The Los Angeles Chargers, 23.8. And there you go, the Detroit Lions, 22.9. What number is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we have, in points per game, we are ranked, if my math is correct, number 21. Now, you can say that that's better than last year, right? We were in the bottom. We were 32nd overall. Then we ended the season, I want to say 29th. We were that bad. Don't forget, the Detroit Lions defense was trending historically bad. Now, I want you to go back and pay attention to this here. Pay attention to this here. What do you notice from these teams? All of these teams before the Detroit Lions. I'm just going off the top of the dome here, so I might need a little bit. I might be a little bit off. Washington Commanders, losing record. Carolina Panthers, losing record. Denver Broncos, losing record. Seeing the pattern here? Chicago Bears, losing record. New York Giants, losing record. Arizona Cardinals, losing record. Indianapolis Colts, I can't remember if they're 5-5 or 4-6. Miami Dolphins, winning record. New England Patriots, losing record. Los Angeles Chargers, the losing records. So aside of the Indianapolis Colts, let's see where they are. They are 500. Aside from the Indianapolis Colts, who are 500, and I can't get back now, the Miami Dolphins are the only team with a winning record. and us. Outside of the 500 Indianapolis Colts, the winning record Miami Dolphins, and the winning record Detroit Lions. What does that tell you? That tells you that the offense has to carry the defense. See, with the Baltimore Ravens, it's the other way around. The Baltimore Ravens only allow about 15, 16 points a game. The Cleveland Browns, the same thing. They have a top-tier defense. Our offense have to carry the defense. The Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns, well, really Baltimore's defense has to carry their offense. Seems like Baltimore has always been that way, even back with Trent Dilfer. Ray Lewis, Joe Flacco, it's been like that since their existence. What does that tell you? The defense can't have it. Going to be very tough to overcome any type of deficit when you can't stop anybody, right? So I know we want to put the blame on Jared Goff and all this other stuff, and he's entitled to some blame. But when you look at the defense, now let's look at what the Detroit Lions have allowed. Okay. Now I know we didn't look at total points. In the first game, they allowed 20 points. In the second game, they allowed 31. They held the Atlanta Falcons to 6. Okay, cool. We getting back on track. Fourth game, 20 points. Fifth game, we allowed 24. Then we allowed 6 in Tampa. We getting back on track. Raiders 14, Chargers 38, Chicago 26, Green Bay 22. I didn't do the math, so I don't know what the total points are thus far for the season. But what we do know is we're in the bottom, very close to the bottom third. Now, I remember in the offseason, I was asking you guys, what would be an acceptable spot for the defense to be in for the Detroit Lions? You said in the 20s, like teens, low 20s, and that's where we are. That's where we are. So let me ask you a question. We've seen the teams that were ahead of the Detroit Lions, or I should say worse than the Detroit Lions in defense, right? We've seen those teams. Miami Dolphins, their offense is staggering. They put up 70 points on the Denver Broncos. Every other offense in there is mediocre. Do the Detroit Lions have what it takes, okay, to overcome a deficit that the defense put them in? So the question is it time for Dan Campbell to move on from Aaron Glenn? That's tough. That's tough. We've seen Dallas. We've seen San Francisco. We've seen those guys. Now, you can also put it on Brad Holmes. You can also put it on Brad Holmes that we don't have enough pieces in place. Or you can do like everyone else is doing and say that we don't have enough pieces, right? Well, let me remind you that Anthony Lynn, the guy's name I couldn't remember a few weeks ago, he was demoted, essentially fired halfway through the season because the offense sucked. Y'all remember that? Year one, when the Lions were 0, 10, and 1. We demoted him very quickly. Second year. There's no reason Aubrey Pleasant should have paid the price for Aaron Glenn. And you could see from Dan Campbell to Aaron Glenn knew he got a reprieve because coach fired, literally threw at a dartboard, and he picked one guy who was not responsible. You can look at the same thing. Say the same thing with Aubrey Pleasant, a guy who, look what he had to work with. So I don't have the answer to that. Is it time for the Detroit Lions to move on from defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn? It's going to be tough to do in the middle of the season. A lot of y'all in the comment section been talking about Kelvin Shepard to be promoted from the linebacker coach to the defensive coordinator. We've seen the tight end coach get promoted, and look what happened there. Maybe this is something we need to consider. We have John Fox as a consultant. Maybe he can help us find somebody. It's not going to happen in season. Aaron Glenn will not be a coach at the end of this year, not with the way the defense is playing right now. Will he be the Detroit Lions coach for the remainder of the season? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. Dan Campbell does not have what it takes to fire Aaron Glenn. He will be our defensive coordinator for the remainder of this season. Dan Campbell said in his press conference today, we have the coaches and the players in place, AKA I'm not firing anybody, and I'm not going to get anybody to come to this team either. Should Aaron Glenn be fired? I'm going to say not if you don't think you can do better in season. If you think you can promote somebody, fine. But at the same time, he just might be the guy. I mean, do you fire the defensive coordinator to shake things up in the middle of a pretty decent season? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Something needs to happen. I mean, you can say we're better than last year, right? So I guess that's a step in the right direction. Let me know what you think. You guys are awesome. Take care of yourself and each other. And as always, go Lions. It's going to be a long, long, long 10 days.